All right. What would you say was the harshest punishment slaves experienced, and why?
Well, there's different types of punishment for different offenses. I would have to say, for emotional pain and suffering, I would say selling family members, because people could be sold for whatever reasons, financial problems of the plantation, but sometimes also to make a point, to break someone. They might sell their family members, and it wound up being a positive in two ways for the master, because they were able to profit from punishing someone. Then if you think about physical pain, there are accounts of the horse bit being put into people's mouths. You see that in Beloved. Also, a lot of historians mention horse bits. They put people in stockade where they'd have them tied up, you know. And then, of course, you have your getting beat with the whip, because it's not like a belt that we're used to. It's at least 5 feet long, and it rips flesh, and people would get beat by the amount of pounds that they didn't pick. So I don't know if I could put one thing as the harshest.
So, well, just what instrument do you believe, if you could, do you believe was the most repugnant, and why?
Probably the forceps, because I learned recently that forceps were first used on women to cause pain. And it wasn't like they were using forceps medically for OBGYN appointments for pap smears, but that I read somewhere that they use forceps to just open African American women up to run experiments on them.
Wow.
To see how there were actual experiments to see how much pain can a black slave take.
Wow.
And so any woman will tell you forceps and all the metal materials that they use now for that type of appointment is discomforting. Mm-hmm. But to know that it was first started just to see how much pain can she take.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that you would have been able to survive the torture slaves had to endure? Why or why not?
That's always an interesting question, because we always say that, well, if I was back then, you know, they wouldn't have been able to get over on me. But I think the reality is, if I lived in that time, I probably would have done what a lot of people would have done just to survive. So I don't think so. I mean, I have a high pain tolerance now, but if I was the exact same person that I am now, I would have been hung. I know that. So I don't know.
Well, how do you believe that these punishments, or how do you believe these punishments that slaves experienced affected their relationships with their own families?
It affected relationships tremendously, because the idea that corporal punishment is a cultural aspect in African American culture, we have to consider the fact that a lot of black kids are still whooped with belts because their parents and their parents and their parents, and then 4 generations back, you're at slavery. So I think it affects that in some regard. It also affects how close parents would become with their family members, or family members, period. It's like you don't want to get too close, because if so-and-so gets sold, then you have to deal with that emotional baggage. So I think that might have something to do with it as well. There's still a lot of research that says